like I said, today we're going to be talking about challenge in video games. And the reason that I'm bringing this particular topic up is because I'm still getting comments on YouTube about Alatreon and about Fatalis. And these are comments from people that are extremely frustrated with the encounters, and they're just saying these mechanics are crap, and etc., etc., etc. And it's just like, they have like just straight up essays written in the comment section. And I've read them. I want to make sure that people understand that I've read those comments and I respect your opinions. But having said that, I would also like to mention that I completely disagree with most of what you guys type. Now, I realize that you guys, there's too many comments for me to respond individually. I hope people can understand that. But most of you bring out the points of, like, for instance, with Alatreon, you're like, I can handle the fight just fine. But then comes the, whatchamacallit, the Eschaton Judgment, and it completely destroys me. The Eschaton Judgment is unfair. The Eschaton Judgment is a one-shot mechanic, and it's crap, and blah, 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 right? That's like the conversation that a lot of people have. And sure, they go much more in depth in it than what I'm doing right now. I'm kind of simplifying the argument. But overall, regardless of how much detail you put into it, there's a lot of people that have some serious issues with Eschaton Judgment. And it's like, look, let me explain something very clearly. If you reduce the threshold to get to survive Eschaton Judgment, that's a nerf. If you make it so that you don't need as much elemental damage to survive Eschaton Judgment, that's a nerf. If you make it so that you don't need elemental damage at all, that's a nerf. If you make it so that he never changes element, that's a nerf. So basically, any change that you do, and I'm sorry, I smacked the microphone. Any change that you do to the Alatreon fight is effectively a nerf. Now, I've spoken at length about how I think that Alatreon's actually awesome, and how I think that Fatalis is also an incredible encounter. And some people have also brought up the fact that in my initial live stream, that I look extremely frustrated during that live stream, and that it's somewhat something of hypocritical of me to then come around and say, after I killed it, that the fight is amazing. And you guys need to understand something, and that this is valid for me as much as it is, I think, for just about any streamer. The raw reactions someone has to something, the very first time they do it, are not necessarily the reactions that you should take into account when it comes to, evaluating something or doing a review of something or anything of that nature. At least that's the way that I think about it, because I don't really filter myself whenever I'm live streaming, not too much anyway. So, if I'm being frustrated, it's going to show. It's going to show. It's like, oh, God damn it, I want to kill this thing. This mechanic is garbage, and this attack is, that's just the way it goes, because I don't filter myself. I don't, I don't really like have a stream persona. Like, you talk to me in real life, and it's pretty much the same you get on the stream, except that when I'm streaming on YouTube, I probably curse less, because I gotta be wary of the all-seeing, all-controlling YouTube algorithm, which will instantly demonetize stuff and whatnot, right? So it's like in both those fights, there will be times where you will see me frustrated the first time that I'm doing it. And on top of it, you also have to keep one thing in mind. Like, whenever I do one of the live streams for Monster Hunter, for like a fresh new event that comes online, those events go online at 1 in the morning. Usually what happens is I'll start a live stream at like midnight 30, after already being sleep deprived, because I have to wake up every single day at 7 a.m. to take my kids to school. So I will start a live stream at like, midnight 30. And then after about half an hour, we will go through the download phase of the stream, where we're all just sitting there waiting for the game to download the update. And then after the download, we sit there and wait for the game to install the update. And, these are all things that kind of contribute to you already being a little bit on your, how should I call it? I was going to call it a a bullcrap threshold. But like your threshold for patience is already been, it's already a little bit towards the irritated side because you've had to wait for the install and wait for this and wait for that. And then you start the fight, and there's mechanics that you weren't expecting. In the case of Alatreon particularly, it was quite simply a case where I was not expecting the level of challenge that fight brought. Now, having said that, after you go through the stream and after you analyze everything, that's when you can actually form a proper opinion of the fight, regardless if I had killed it or not. Which, if you remember with the Fatalis fight, I specifically said, I'm okay if I never kill this monster. I'm okay with that. Because it was a very challenging encounter, and if I had never killed it, I would be like, you know what, that's fine. Because I still enjoyed the rest of the game. It's still a fantastic experience. It's still my favorite game of all time, so it's whatever, right? Like, I was still going to try. And I was going to keep trying if I had to for months, because that's just what I do. Perseverance, as I've mentioned, is a characteristic that I consider to be my defining one. Perseverance, just like smash your face on it until, either it breaks or my face breaks, and then I go and fix up my face, and then I come back and smash my face on it some more. But essentially, at the end of the day, you have to step back and look at these fights and actually analyze them after you've been through it and after that visceral reaction. And in my opinion, I think that they are great fights. Same thing for Arch-Tempered Velkhana, by the way. I also think Arch-Tempered Velkhana is a very fun fight. Although these are also fights that I don't want to do a million times over. These are also fights that, they're enjoyable to a point, but after you've grinded them enough, it's not something that you feel like, oh, I can't wait to do it again and again and again. But that's like every fight. So basically what I see is there's several people that think that the difficulty levels are too high. And what I can tell you is that there's definitely a big contrast. There's a big contrast from the difficulty levels of, say, Tempered Ruiner Gigante to Alatreon, right? Or even Arch-Tempered Namiel to Alatreon. There's a big, the difficulty curve goes up. And some people didn't take that too well. There's also a lot of people that only play in pugs, which means that your differences are going to, your experiences are going to vary wildly depending on how good the pugs are. So in the case, for instance, of Alatreon, he can wipe out a whole pug in one go. So when people tell me that they've completely mastered the fight of Alatreon, I'm thinking to myself, well, did you master it solo or did you master it in a group? Because if you master the fight, if nothing else that Alatreon is doing is a problem for you, then you can just die twice to Eschaton Judgment and win. Like, not kidding. A lot of people did it that way for their first time. As a matter of fact, I remember particularly Chaos Slayer, who plays Gunlance and pretty much just plays shelling to the exclusivity of all else. Whenever he plays Gunlance, he includes shelling, right? And that's how he did it. He beat Alatreon by going after it and just spam long shelling on it, and then died during Eschaton Judgment and came back, spammed shell on it again, then died during Eschaton Judgment one more time, and then spammed shelling on it again until he eventually overcame it. And it's all about just how much do you want to win. And some people claim that, the only reason I win is because I have 2,700 hours in the game, because I play Monster Hunter, the exclusivity of everything else, and whatnot, and not everybody has the time to do that. And it's like, okay, well, not everybody has the time to do it. You're absolutely correct. That just means that content maybe is not for you. And I think that is something that a lot of people have a difficult time accepting when there's content in the game that's not necessarily aimed towards them. Because well, I did everything else. Why can't I do this one thing? And it actually harkens back to World of Warcraft for me, for instance, which is I always wanted to, when I started playing vanilla, I always wanted to do Molten Core and 40-man raids, and I never did it. I never did it because by the time I got there, it was already the Burning Crusade was already out. So I just wasn't in time. But even if I was in time, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to be able to join a raid and do a 40-man raid of Molten Core and whatnot. It was just something that I looked towards, and I was like, well, maybe that particular content just isn't for me. And again, I just think that there's a lot of people that have a problem kind of like accepting that. They want to be able to do the entirety of the content of the game. And to that, all I can really say is like, look, you have to either put in more effort or you have to accept that it's not for you. And this is an argument that's like, it's as old as, I don't know, but it's been an argument that I've seen quite a lot. As a matter of fact, even when Sekiro came out, that argument was brought to the limelight yet again, with a lot of people saying Sekiro needs an easy mode. To the point where people even talked about Celeste, which Celeste has like accessibility modes that give you a bunch of different options and whatnot that you can kind of like customize. You can play the game in slow motion. You can do all of these different things. And I think Celeste is actually a really good example because I actually agree with everything that Celeste does. And I think that more games should do what Celeste does. But what Celeste does is not, I mean, I don't know if it has multiple difficulty levels or not, but I'm talking specifically about the accessibility options that it has. Because to me, accessibility options is not necessarily making different difficulty modes, right? So it's like, if more games could do what Celeste does with the slow motion mode, maybe a God mode, modes where you can pause every frame or whatever for accessibility for gamers that either have some kind of a condition. If every game could have more input methods, like special controllers and whatnot for people that have, maybe some other kind of disability with their fingers or whatnot. Like, dude, the more every single game does that, the happier I am. And now you guys are asking me, well, Rurikhan, why not an easy mode, right? An easy mode would just make things easier. And let me tell you why. Because 9 times out of 10, when you have a game that has multiple difficulty modes, they're not properly balanced. What does that mean? Either hard mode is the actual normal mode. Normal mode becomes too easy, and easy mode is just a complete walk in the park. Or, it's just the numbers don't add up, which I see a lot of games do. Like, I'll tell you right now, 9 times out of 10, whenever a game has like normal, hard, as a matter of fact, sometimes they go up to like 5 or 6 different difficulties. I'm just looking at the screen and I'm just like, what do I do now? What difficulty do I go play in? And sometimes I'll pick the highest difficulty and it'll be too easy. Other times I'll pick the highest difficulty and it'll be impossible. And then I lower it 1 difficulty and it's too easy. And the balancing just like goes all over the place. The balancing just like it completely loses me, because a lot of the times developers, what they do to balance difficulty is they just up the numbers. There's like, oh yeah, you want the game harder? Sure. This mob now has 10 times the amount of HP it had before. And I'm just like, well, that's not harder. That's more boring. That's just boring. You're just making me do this encounter for longer. You're just making me do this boss fight for longer for no reason, right? And that's the problem, is that, again, 9 times out of 10, whenever a developer puts in an easy mode or a hard mode or whatever, it just ends up being bloated numbers or much lower numbers, and it just doesn't feel right. And then they try to balance things around the normal difficulty, and that's kind of like the difficulty that you're supposed to play in. But a lot of times that difficulty still feels too easy, which is why I much rather prefer it when a developer looks at a game and they're just like, no, this is the one difficulty, and here you go. Like they do in Dark Souls, like they do in Demon Souls, like they do in Sekiro. Like, I prefer it that way. Like, here's your one difficulty, go. And then it's like, if you finish the game, then you unlock like, additional modifiers and whatnot. And that's the way that I personally, that's the way that I prefer it, because you usually get a much more meaningful experience with that. You get a much better sense of reward with that than necessarily just like, well, this fight's it's too hard on normal or whatever. I'm just going to bump the difficulty down. And again, you get less balancing. Like you can clearly see in a lot of these games, like the crap balancing that it has. Like for instance, a good case that I always like to bring up is friggin' Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where I went in there. I don't remember if I went for the hardest difficulty or the one below that or whatever. I remember backstabbing an enemy and like they don't even respond to the animations because the game's freaking broken. But then on top of it, like you backstab an enemy and you deal like no damage. Why? Because the only difficulty aspect of it is like bloated HP. It's not like the enemies have new moves. It's not like the enemies do anything different. They just have bloated HP. It's like they become sponges. And that's not fun. That's not fun at all. And that's not how you do different difficulty modes. So to me, it's like accessibility modes, bring all of them. Give people God mode, give people all of this stuff, boom, everything. Everything that you can possibly give to people for accessibility, give it to them. But different difficulty modes, I completely disagree. I completely disagree. But yeah. That's just my thought on it, which is why whenever people tell me about how, the timer in Fatalis is the problem. Extending the timer in Fatalis, that's a nerf. Because a lot of people say, I could totally beat Fatalis if I had more time. Well, okay, that's a nerf. You're nerfing the fight. The encounter is much less meaningful because a lot of people, their achievement is being able to beat that timer. Fatalis is almost like, in a way, it's a time trial. It's a complete challenge for people because of the time aspect. You have to get as much damage in as possible in as short amount of time as possible. And like I said, my first kill was exhilarating, which is the one that you're watching right here. My first kill was exhilarating. It took me 29 minutes and 30 seconds, and I used every single cart. And then the following ones were much better and much easier and all that. But the first kill was absolutely, when you're there like, yeah, got him. And you're not going to get that if you're just like, no, give me the easy mode fight. Just like a lot of people, I feel, they felt cheated out of Alatreon when they fought him in anticipation of Fatalis. Because it was a weak-ass Alatreon, basically. That Alatreon was so weak, it did like, one Eschaton Judgment? And then like when he stopped the Eschaton Judgment, I went over there, I slapped him in the face, and it was like, oh no, don't hurt me, daddy, no, stop, please. And then he died. So, yeah. I don't know what else to say about this topic. That, like I said, the main reason I want to talk about it is because there's still so many people constantly bringing it up. And personally, I just hope that the Monster Hunter team isn't discouraged by people saying that, because I think that hard encounters like this are important. Encounters that challenge you, that take you out of your comfort zone. Encounters that take people out of their comfort zones are incredibly important in video games. Because I feel like a lot of people, they get into games and they get into this comfort zone of theirs and they get used to playing games a certain way. And then it's like, no, I want to keep playing it like this forever. And that's fine because, everybody has jobs, everybody has stuff that they want to do. Not everybody wants to really put as much time into the game as, some of the top hunters out there like Kanta, Cantore. Those are always the two names that kind of instantly popped ahead. But, Team Darkside, not everybody wants to put in as much time as those players. But I think that the people that are not willing to invest the time required, to not even to get to that level, but to at least get good enough to overcome these challenges. And I'm not saying get good, just get good. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, if you are not willing to put in enough time to improve your own skill to be able to vanquish these encounters, then again, maybe these encounters just aren't for you. Just like I've said to many people in the past, if you need an easy mode to play Sekiro, then maybe Sekiro is not the game for you. And it's like, not every game needs to cater to everyone. This is something that I feel like I need to bring up every single time. Not every game needs to cater to everyone. There's plenty of games that don't cater to me. There's tons of games that don't cater to me. And that's fine. Because you just look at it and you're like, yep, yeah, buddy, that one, not for me. It's like, if I go and I play a racing simulator, an actual racing simulator with actual, racing mechanics, simulation of racing mechanics. And, I turn off all of the driving aids and all of this stuff and just it becomes as close to reality as possible. I'm not going to be able to play that game. Because, sure, I can drive a car, but you think I'm going to be able to drive a car competitively with, you think I'd be able to handle the type of engine that you put on like a racing simulator? No. So what do? I accept this game is not for me because I'm not willing to put in the time and practice to get good at it. Just like there's a lot of people that would never play certain flight simulators because they're not willing to put in the time and practice to get better at it. It's the same thing. It's like, why can't we have these types of challenges in video games? I think that's actually good. Take people out of their comfort zone. I think it's great that there's racing games out there for racing enthusiasts that really take things to the nth degree, where you have to figure out the tension of this. It's not springs. What do you call them? You know what I'm saying? Like the stuff in the tires. When now you have to. Okay, I want to adjust it just slightly because then I can get the curves down. I think that's great. That level of detail is fantastic. That level of challenge is fantastic. I think it's awesome. And it's not something that's going to be for everyone, but it is something that is for some people. And for some people, that experience makes them feel really good. And I think it's just incredibly oversimplifying to just say that no, they need to bring this down to my level so that I can beat it. And again, this is happening now with Monster Hunter, with people going and review bombing it on Steam because of the fact that Fatalis is hard, review bombing it on Steam because Alatreon was hard, and just review bombing the game whenever something slightly above average of a challenge. People review bomb it during friggin' Raging Brachydios. I mean, come on. During the Raging Brachydios and the Furious Rajang patch, sure, they were hard. But is it you're really going to review bomb this game because of free content that you weren't able to defeat? I don't think that's reasonable. Just like I don't think that's reasonable for someone to expect that every single game and every single update to a video game is going to cater to them. And good God, could we have any more trains come on today while I'm trying to do this video? Thank you. But yeah, it's just something that hits really close to home for me because, a couple of years ago, before I started playing Demon Souls, I felt like every game was basically hey, can you press the X button? Okay, you win. That was 90% of video games. Can you press the X button? You win. That's kind of like what you got. You would go onto a game and it would be very little challenge. This was when I was actually playing World of Warcraft for the first time, by the way. But every other game that I would try, I'd just go through and oh yeah, I'll press this button and it attacks and it kills things, and there wasn't really that much challenge. And it was so refreshing to see Demon Souls just be oh no, you messed up, you dead. And you actually that was one of the few times that I was actually challenged in a single player game. It was oh crap, if I don't pay attention here, I'm gonna die in seconds. And it was great to feel that. Because, when you actually killed something, when you killed a boss, it actually meant something. It actually meant no, I studied the patterns. I figured out how this boss moves and I figured out how to do the thing and I killed it. So yeah, it's I hope that Capcom continues to provide us with at least some challenging encounters. And I hope that developers in general keep these things in mind, that accessibility, yes, is important, but accessibility is not necessarily difficulty modes. Accessibility is something different. And even during the Sekiro argument, we saw people with disabilities come forward and say stop using us as excuses. I remember this dude that I think he shared a video with me, and he was paralyzed on parts of his body or whatever it was, and he had to hold the controller in really weird ways with his hands because his hands were also kind of messed up. But he was he was parrying better than me in Sekiro. No joke. He was playing Sekiro better than me, which again, I've never said that I'm amazing at these games. I just have that defining characteristic I keep talking about, perseverance, where I just smash my head against something until either my head gives or the thing gives. That's how I do it. I just smash my face into it until I win. And if I don't win, then I don't win. But whatever, I'll keep smashing my face on it on occasion until I get lucky or something, you know? But yeah. That's kind of like my thoughts on this this situation. But again, I still want people to understand, like, I appreciate your feedback and all of the things that you guys write. But ultimately, I don't agree. I appreciate the feedback. Personally, I do not agree with what a lot of the people are saying. I do not think that the timer on Fatalis is artificial difficulty. I do not think that Eschaton Judgment is artificial difficulty. I think it's difficulty. It's challenge. It's like you have to figure out a way to adapt your build to defeat Eschaton Judgment. You have to figure out a way to adapt your build to beat the 30-minute timer. Like, look, if you actually watch right now, like, look at it. Look at how much time I have left. I got like almost nothing. I'm just like in full desperation mode, swinging wildly at Fatalis. Just trying to stay alive. On my last cart after eating Safeguard. Like missing hits because I'm just like, just die! And then I killed it. And that was amazing. And if it wasn't for that 30-minute timer, I wouldn't have gotten that rush. Because I knew that I would have more time and it would have been a different experience altogether. And I think that these are experiences that are very well crafted to really test hunters to their limits. And I think that that's a good thing, ultimately.